it's clear. I mean, their stance.
The question was already leading to a certain answer, but I will repeat the question, whether there's a difference in approach from the EU and the US about the role of the military in Turkey. Yes, there is a difference between the two approaches, which I think is in a way natural. I mean, from the EU point of view, the role of the military and their intervention into politics clearly goes against perceptions or convictions inside the EU about the role of the military and how they should not intervene into politics. And when that happens in an accession country, for good reasons, the EU is quite critical, openly very critical on what's happening. It has always been. And I think from that point of view, I think many in the EU would welcome the recent developments, because it means that this untouchable role of the military is finally being touched. From an American point of view, I mean, Turkey is not going to join the United States. The relations between Turkey and the US have always been much more strategic, and that's always been more a bigger role for the military in that. You know, all of you, that there have been traditional strong roles between the Turkish military and the American military, and I think it's one of the reasons why, for instance, in 2007, when there was this famous 27th of April coup, the EU spoke out clearly against it. The State Department didn't, or the then US government. I think because they wanted to keep their relations with the military good, didn't want to insult them. I think that behind the scenes, but that's partly speculation, behind the scenes, there is probably some pressure from the American military on the Turkish military as well to adapt to the new situation. The EU does it in a much more open way, making declarations and making it clear how they see civil-military relations. So there's a different approach, historically to be explained, but yeah, there is a clear difference. I think that both, in the end, if they push the same way, it could be very helpful. And for the moment, I think they are pushing it the same way, saying to the military, guys, you have a very important role to defend Turkey's borders and security, but please step out of your political role. I think that's the common denominator. One says it more openly, the other does it probably behind the scenes.
Ömer? If I may add something to both what Orhan and Joost mentioned, I think we have to understand American foreign policy makers in the way they react to developments in Turkey. They're very cautious about the conspiracy theories in Turkey that the US is supporting moderate Islam as a model in the region against radical Islam, and that the United States has been very supportive of AK Party from the get-go, and that the United States basically has this agenda of promoting AK Party as an answer to the clash of civilizations, as basically a party that proves that you can be pro-West, democratic, secular, Muslim at the same time. This has created, as you know, Ali, a huge conspiracy theory among secularists in Turkey that basically the US is behind every development in Turkey and that they're promoting the soft Islamization of the country. So US foreign policy makers are careful when they tread with Turkey. They don't want to appear too close to the AK Party because this would basically validate the viewpoint of elements within the Turkish hardliner secularist establishment that the US is there to help its Islamist friend in government. And I think, more interestingly, the AK Party is also concerned about this. They don't want to be seen as America's puppet in Turkish politics. So occasionally they go out of their way to prove that they can be also anti-American, that they basically don't have this, that they don't owe anything to the United States in terms of their presence in Turkish politics. So we should also question to what degree AK Party itself would want the United States to always come in defense of itself against the military. Maybe at this juncture, it's good that the United States is not really taking sides on these issues as far as AK Party is concerned. So I know that there are those who would like to hear more support from the United States, but I think the EU, as you said, has a much more legitimate role to play in this. Just one last example, when the ambassador of the United States, Jim Jeffrey, last month, gave an interview to a Turkish newspaper, and he said that the Turkish military, he was asked a question about the role of the Turkish military and whether the Turkish military has a legitimate role to play. And he said that Turkey is a strong democracy and that as democratization continues, it will be normal to expect the Turkish military to play a less important role. And to me, that was an innocuous, normal comment, but the Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs said that this is interference in Turkish domestic politics. They were not happy with it. And I think AK Party itself was not very happy with it. They don't want to be perceived as a party that is protected by the United States. So that's a complicating factor.
Just before we leave this domestic thing, I would like to revisit briefly the question that Orhan Kemal Cengiz raised earlier, which is that of the Kurds. And the gentleman from the Turkish embassy who had asked whether we were optimistic or whether Turkey was moving in the right direction. I would have to say, as someone who's spent some time looking at the Kurdish problem, I worked on a book, I don't know, 8, 9 years ago, called Turkey's Kurdish Problem, and it was written at a time when things were really quite bad, as you were referring to, in the southeast. And the book was somewhat critical of Turkey's traditional views of trying to suppress the Kurdish identity as being a source of one of the sources of the problem, not the only source. I think today, looking back, I think there's huge progress. I mean, many of you will recall that even the word Kurd, Kürt in Turkish, was not even used. It was never used in the press. When there was discussion of the Kurdish problem in the southeast, it was always the southeast problem, way back even before the Kurds were referred to as mountain Turks, or that Kurdish was not a genuine language. It was just an old dialect of Turkish, which is absurd because everybody knows that Kurdish is closely linked to the Iranian family of languages. So all of that's gone. I mean, most of it's gone. There's open discussion. The word Kurd is used, Kurdish is used. You hear Kurdish on the radio, Kurd on television. Kurdish's lessons are there's open discussion of the thing. People are frank and they're admitting that they're Kurdish or Turkish or whatever. So in terms of is Turkey moving in the right direction, yes, I am unhappy with the recent developments. But I think in my view, whereas the government, I think, has now moved forward in quite positive directions, it is ironically the PKK itself or other elements within Turkey, among Turkish Kurds, that I think have now become much more the problem. Before they had some legitimate complaints. I think they still have grounds for some complaints, but they have not moved forward to the degree that the government itself has, I believe. But I think this is a temporary stage. And in the last decade, it's been a huge improvement, and one that I think means that some kind of solution is on the horizon. The basic issue of acknowledging an alternative identity within the country, in a multicultural country as Turkey is, that bridge has now been crossed. Any other comments, though? Please.
It's okay, problem. I would like to add what you already said. I mean, for Kurdish problem, it was for me. I've been watching it for so many years. From where it came here, it's unbelievable. I mean, it was so terrific. All this village destruction issues, other things, etc. Still, we have a long way to walk. It is clear, but I mean, we have a television, Kurdish television right now, state-sponsored. And the other thing, likewise, we have many taboos in Turkey. One of them is Armenian issue. Last year, we had a campaign, and I apologize, campaign. I'm one of the signatories of this campaign. I can't imagine this campaign would have been held 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. And, but no one was killed. Or no one was attacked, and my explanation, because of the success of Ergenekon case. Because of the success, I mean, Ergenekon gave a